However, there is also the related auto-cannibalism. This is the act of eating one's own body. Auto-cannibalism is a loose term. Some scientists would file things like biting your fingernails or licking a paper cut under auto-cannibalism. Others point to more extreme acts: ritual practice, torture, body modification, or some types of self-harm. So why do people eat people? In 2016, archaeologist James Cole published the most comprehensive assessment of the nutritional content of the human body to date. Broadly, he found that humans offer similar sustenance as animals of outside. We are not particularly nutritious or non-nutritious. According to Cole, the human body provides about 125,000 calories altogether. This is certainly a lot at first glance. But as you consider the practical realities of cannibalizing someone, 125,000 calories becomes less than perfect. First, people generally exist in communities, so in pre-modern times when cannibalism was decidedly common, any single source of meat would be distributed among a dozen or more individuals. Secondly, 2,000 calories per day may provide an at-rest person suitable nutrition. In times without modern luxuries, when life was just physically more demanding, that requirement quickly would have risen to 3,000 or more. Additionally, it is just difficult to kill and butcher a human. Murder would be usually met with dangerous resistance from the victim. Butchery is a laborious task with not insignificant skill requirements. Finally, Cole's estimate includes things like bones and teeth. It would be difficult to actually consume these parts of the human body. So with all this in mind, hunting game has generally been the preferred method of nutrition for people across the world. It is easier, more efficient, and less destructive to the community. There are societies, cultures that do not know and will never know. But broadly, it is safe to say that cannibalism has generally not been used for physical immersion, a significant part of any diet. Rather, the practice has existed to serve functions beyond regular sustenance. As I mentioned earlier, there are basically 4 such functions. The first is cannibalism as a solution. To say there is some problem occurring with a person or society, and consumption of human flesh is the remedy. There is cannibalism as culture. This more nebulous function sees cannibalism as part of a ritual that has some significance, often religious, within a group. This tends to overlap with the previous function, but not always. Next is cannibalism for survival, which is probably the most acceptable context of the practice: shipwrecks, famines, etc. Lastly, cannibalism as a crime. Why is it that some serial killers go beyond murder and physically consume their victims? There's one more piece of the puzzle as well, one which is more cultural and abstract and maybe even more insightful. But first, let's look at these functions of cannibalism. One of the most significant justifications for cannibalism has been to fix some type of issue, to address some specific concern that it was believed consuming human flesh would resolve. The Aztecs are one of the more famous examples of human cannibalism. The Aztec belief system is complex and should certainly be discussed for hours. But in the interest of brevity, we can safely say that the Aztecs were desperate to keep the gods on their side. They believed that the universe had been destroyed 4 times already, and that their present era, called the 5th sun, began with the gods voluntarily sacrificing their own blood to keep the sun in motion and to maintain the universe. By regularly engaging in human sacrifice, the Aztecs would continue to provide the sun god with blood and prolong the 5th sun. There were a number of annual festivals for this purpose. The most famous involved sacrificing war captives at the top of the pyramids and offering their hearts to the sun god. The limbs of these captives became the chief ingredient in a stew of peppers and tomatoes, but only a small handful of families would be allowed to consume the stew. Indeed, you will notice that very little of this really involves eating humans. Cannibalism was a very small part of the Aztec sacrifice. There's no evidence that the Aztecs enjoyed consuming human flesh, nor that they killed people for the sole purpose of cannibalism. We cannot categorically say Aztec people were particularly active or enthusiastic cannibals. European medical cannibalism is also a well-documented phenomenon. In historian Louis Noble's book, Medicinal Cannibalism in Early Modern English Literature and Culture, the author discusses 16th and 17th medical remedies which centered around consuming human flesh. Egyptian mummies were crumbled into onyx, which were said to stop internal bleeding. Human skull was ground and consumed to cure headache. One famed 17th century medical pioneer brewed a drink to stop excessive bleeding that was a mixture of human skull and chocolate. King Charles II of England famously drank a personal tincture, which was a mixture of alcohol and human skull. Drinking blood was also a remarkable